So today is just the initial presentation of what each of the department heads have presented. Wanted to first go over what is included in the budget assumptions within the revenue, and then as well on the expense line. There is, according to state guidelines, legislation that was passed in the General Assembly this year limits the growth in your property tax levy for 2024 at 4%. So we have included that 4% levy growth within the revenue estimates. We still do not have the total estimate from the state with regards to local income tax, but we have estimated based on what they have provided for new revenue or new income tax growth in Boone County for 2024 at 7.4%. So there will be some minor adjustments to that once we get the certified amount for the town. We have included, based upon the state estimates, the appropriate increases for local road and street, motor vehicle highway revenues. We have included both on the revenue side as well as on the expense additional excess levy request for the rural to urban proposed transition for the 3 neighborhoods. There really is basically a net there of 0 because the revenue would be counterbalanced by the expense should those not move forward. It also does not include available excess levy for excess levy on assessed value growth. The state permits you to appeal to the Department of Local Government Finance for an excess levy appeal based upon your assessed value growth when your assessed value of your unit grows at a faster rate, at 2% faster than the state average over the last 3 years. For Zionsville, that has happened now for the last 3 years. We believe, based on the estimate that we have compiled, an additional levy of approximately $866,000 should the council choose to move forward with that. Those revenues are not in the estimates at this point in time. On the expense side, we have included a 7% cost of living for all employees, in longevity pay for those employees that qualify for longevity pay based on the percentages or the dollar amounts as were approved in last year's budget as well. It includes a 2% increase in the 401A match. Today, the town provides a 50% match up to 6% of an employee's contribution, or a cost to the town of 3%. There's a proposal here to increase that to a 50% match up to a 10% employee contribution, which would be a 5% 401A match. It includes all requests from department heads for operating expenses and capital, and includes 28 new full-time positions. A few of those are, as you saw in the meeting earlier, moving part-time to full-time, but that includes 4 new police officers, 15 new employees in fire, 14 firefighters, and 1 admin, 1 new employee in finance, taking that part-time to full-time in HR, a new employee in planning, 3 new employees in parks, of which 1 of those is also a part-time to full-time, as well as 1 of those is a share with RDC for maintenance of Creekside area, where RDC would be sharing that cost of that employee for the maintenance of Creekside. 2 new employees in DPW, 1 new employee in IT, for a total of 28 new full-time positions. Today is the budget workshop, an opportunity for council members to ask questions of each of the department's requests. We are proposing and anticipate an introduction of the budget at your September 5th budget meeting or council meeting. We would enter the Form 3 no later than September 8th. The first budget hearing, or the budget hearing, would be scheduled then for September the 18th, and proposed adoption on October the 2nd. One of the reasons for the early adoption of the budget this year is should the town council choose to move forward with the rural to urban, as well as the excess levy appeal. Those are required to be sent to the Department of Local Government Finance by mid-October. And certainly with the excess levy appeal, there is quite a bit of documentation that would be required with that. And so the early adoption of that of the budget would allow us to complete those requests and submit those to the Department of Local Government Finance. DLGF is not obligated to provide an excess levy appeal. You must prove that you cannot meet the needs of the citizens of the town of Zionsville without that excess levy. You also are required to prove that you cannot meet that without the excess levy, or you could not provide it with the funds that you have. So there would be a great amount of explanation should the town council choose to move forward in that manner. The budget that is presented today, has been noted in the meeting earlier, is a deficit of about $12.2 million from expected revenues, and would bring expected cash balances at 2024 down to around $17.5 million total. With that, I would entertain any questions or move it over to the next ones on the list.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah.
So the excess levy on the assessed value growth, what is the, you said, should the council so choose to do that, what is the mechanism to do that? Is that to submit the budget as if that's happening?
You would need to include that within the budget. We would then, there's about a 7 or 8 page justification that we would work with the administration and the council to complete those pieces and make that request to the Department of Local Government Finance for that additional levy. That then does become a permanent levy increase and a part of your base levy moving forward.
And is the 866,000 you referenced in that included in the proposed budget sheets we've gotten in terms of revenues, or would this be additional?
It is not included as it relates to revenue.
Okay.
So that would be an additional 866 million or in revenue.
If it's billion, that'd be great.
Thousand.
Yeah.
So in order to, in piggybacking on that question, does the fact that currently we have a pretty robust fund balance affect our ability to get that levy approved?
And what we would need to do, yes, it could potentially, Alex. But what we would need to do is provide documentation to DLGF with respect to the excessive growth, not only the growth that the town has experienced over recent years, but the expected growth that is on the horizon moving forward, and the need to have those dollars to meet those ongoing expenses moving forward. And as well, based on the fact that over the last 2 years, fund balances have declined, expected decline based upon the investment the council made last year, both in capital and new employees for this year's budget, as well as potentially the impact of additional expenditures in the 2024 budget and what that would do to fund balances moving forward.
One clarification question. September 18th was what?
On September 18th would be the budget hearing.
Okay.
All of those meeting dates coincide with your current council schedule. So the introduction would be just an introduction discussion of the advertised budget, and then the full discussion question of department heads about budgets, and any questions that the council would have would be made at the September 18th budget council meeting. And then we would propose final adoption at your meeting on the 2nd.
So just the different departments, or we call them functional areas, that we'll be discussing today, and all the department heads are here to speak.
As far as as we were putting the budget together, the slide here shows some of the priorities that we've been able to pull out during this budget process. Obviously, the infrastructure, public works. I won't read the slide to you since you can read it, but if you have any questions about that with the corresponding department head.
Cindy, is it 12 or 14? Tim said 14 firefighters. That says 12.
James?
It's 15. It's 15. And
I know, but one's administration, 14 were firefighters. That says
15,
12.
12,
firefighters.
that was incorrect as well. There are 15 total new employees,
Okay.
12 operational,
12.
3 in
operational.
administration.
Got it.
And we'll cover that in detail here.
This just goes, shows the breakdown of spend by department this year versus what they've listed for the 2024 budget. And I will say the additional appropriations today that were approved, we do take those into consideration. We have to list any additionals for the last half of the year for this year. So the ending balances should have reflected those, is that correct? Oh, we haven't incorporated in that. Okay, they will be incorporated in there. But this will give you an idea of increase over budget this year to what's being requested for next year.
This here looks at the fund balances in both 2015, 19, 2023, and then the expected estimated fund balance ending 2024. Councilor Choi asked me yesterday to put together some information, which I provided to him, showing both the surplus and deficit of each of the operating years. And in 2020, you had a surplus of revenues over expenditures of a little over 3.3 million. In 2021, you had revenues over expenditures of a little over 2.2 million. In 2022, you had revenues over expenditures of about 4.1 million. You passed a budget last year knowing that or anticipating that you would have expenditures in excess of revenues based upon the one-time capital expenses and some of the new employees to pay down or spend down some of those large cash balances that you had. You passed the budget at that time anticipating that that would be close to $6 million of expenditures in excess of revenues. Because of the supplemental lit distributions that you received this year, we anticipate at this point in time that that deficit being reduced to about $2.3 million because of those additional revenues that came in that were unexpected, that we did not put into the budget last year. And so as a result, if there is a supplemental, you never can budget on a supplemental lit distribution, but that would also impact those revenue, imbalances that you would see. So we would anticipate, based on where your proposed budget is today, at ending 2024 with cash balances in your levy supported funds of about 5.6 million or $17.5 million. And that is about $5 million less than where you ended 2019.
Good morning, everybody. Proud to meet with y'all, present our request for the 2024 budget. Our requests fall under 4 main categories: staffing, our fleet, facility maintenance, and automated external defibrillators. The first, and obviously the most costly ask we have this year is for staffing. I'm asking for 4 new positions, and that's based upon the following. The population of town continues to grow. The last official census information showed in 2020 that it had grown 6.55% from the prior year, and I think similar growth will be proven in the subsequent official census information. Our service area will grow next year to include Holiday Farms, Devonshire, Chelsea Park. There's continued development and significant growth in areas like the development at Sycamore and 421. Our officer to citizen ratio continues to be much lower than other departments within Boone County. That ratio per thousand in Whitestown is 2.73. In Lebanon, it's 2.49. In our town, minus the school resource officers, it's 1.28. I'm sorry, with the SROs, it's 1.28. Without the SROs, it's 1.05. We had not had any increase in growth since 2018. This year, we were given 5 new positions. Those positions were assigned as follows. 3 of them went to SRO positions, school resource officer positions. We also now staff a variety of important extra assignments, including the Indiana Crimes Against Children Task Force, which is headquartered in Whitestown and includes members from all law enforcement within Boone County. We had a member, and we'd like to replace the member we had in the Indiana Gun Crimes Task Force. And that position is important for a lot of different reasons. And fortunately, the state provides up to $75,000 in reimbursement for that officer's position. So what that means is, of those 5 positions we had last year, we didn't grow our patrol strength really at all. And that's very important. And I really feel there's a need to do that. And can you go to the staffing slide a minute? The organizational
The org
chart.
chart.
So my proposal for next year is that those 4 new officers be assigned to this tactical shift that you see up there. And the idea is that to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense just to have an even number of officers on both the shifts, because the workload at different hours of the day is different. There isn't a lot going on at 4 in the morning. There isn't a lot going on at 6 in the morning. So to have all those shifts staffed in that fashion doesn't provide us for increases in personnel when we need them the most. This tactical assignment, however you want to describe it, provides that 2 officers work in the morning from 10:30 in the morning until 7 at night, and then at 7 at night till 3 in the morning. And our officers now work a 12-hour shift. These positions would be 8-hour shifts, because the idea is to have more officers present during those hours. And with the 12-hour shifts, they have, they work less days of the week. So this provides that we have this increase in personnel during the hours where we need them the most. The next ask is for automobiles, and that is to help ensure that we replace our fleet in a timely manner and provides officers with good, solid vehicles at the same time. So 8 of those vehicles would be for our regular officer replacement program. 4 of them would be to help staff those new positions. Obviously, the new officers wouldn't get the brand new vehicles. They would get an older car, but we need them to grow the fleet. The maintenance of the building is primarily for that maintenance. Drywall needs some repair, painting, flooring is may even be the original carpet. Maybe Drake can help me with that. I don't know, but it's almost to the point where it's almost a hygiene problem. It's so in disrepair, the floors at least. This year, I'm embarrassed to tell Drake, but I significantly underestimated the cost of that maintenance, and we don't have enough to do it. So our goal is to carry that over in the next year and ask for this additional amount to make sure that we can get that work done.
Chief, we just appropriated money in the prior meetings. That money, or
Yes.
that's additional money?
That would be that.
Okay, so that doesn't need to be in the budget.
So we have 25,000 in this year's budget already for construction. Today, you guys appropriated 26,000, so
Yes.
51 total.
Yes.
I believe, and Bobby Adams can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe our quote for those repairs is 78,000, so we're a little bit short. So we could either carry over what we have now into next year and reduce that ask, which is 85,000 for 2024. We can get that done if that quote will still be honored, or we could possibly do part of the work this year and then finish the rest of it in 2024 with some of these funds as well.
When we did the original budget, this wasn't on the radar at that point, but it's a great way to do it without having to, spend more money next year. And finally, we have 17 aging automatic external defibrillators, which all the officers carry in their cars. They're $2,200 a piece, so somewhere around $3,700. Questions?
Just one quick question. The 1.28 officers that's per 1,000 residents. Is that just the ZPD service area, or is that all of Zionsville?
That is all of Zionsville. The urban area minus the SRO is the ratio of officers to residents is 1.58.
So in your request, what exactly falls? There's the CCD's capital outlays and the police capital outlays. What falls under equipment construction? And then equipment under CCD?
The equipment in CCD includes our vehicles, the vehicle purchase. It also includes the replacement for PBTs, some of the AEDs, our body worn camera contract, firearms, radios, tasers. So the majority of our equipment asks are coming from CCD.
Did you have a separate line item for vehicle?
Correct.
Okay, so that's what you were just talking about.
Correct.
What about, I guess there's not much in the fund, 271 fund for equipment. And construction. What is it?
Construction is the repairs for the facility.
Oh, that's the 85.
Yeah, it's more maintenance and construction.
Thank you.
Well, good morning. I'd like to thank the three bureaus within the fire department, that being fire prevention, operations, and administration. All three of those individuals, Josh Frost, Aaron Gibbons, and Jason Potts, have worked tirelessly to help prepare the needs request for the Zionsville Fire Department for 2024. Starting off, the most notable need for the organization is staffing. As we mentioned, to clarify, the original request includes 12 operational firefighters. Those are shift firefighters working at the fire stations, and 3 ministerial individuals working in the office. I'll let Jason talk a little bit about the operations individuals.
Some of you guys may remember in the last couple of years, we've worked with a consulting group to go over a strategic plan process. Following that process, they provided us some recommendations, some things that we need to work on, some things that we have been working on, but it's nice to get affirmation from the outside. One of those things was our staffing levels and how it relates to employee benefits and just overall staffing goals to meet the operational needs of the department. With that, that's where the 12 firefighters come to. The 12 firefighters allows us to actually meet the 1710 requirement as far as staffing on our apparatus, to have 4 firefighter EMTs on an engine, 2 firefighter EMT or paramedics on the ambulances all the time, while still allowing the paid time off, all the benefits, educational leave, the things that we want to have our people do so they can continue their health and safety, their development and growth within the department, while still meeting that operational need that we have in town. With that, also, if some of you guys have participated in our Citizens Academy, have gone through some of the practical skills, having that 4th firefighter on the truck makes a big difference as far as the workload. Providing that workload, our expectation is we should see a reduction in injuries, just because they're not having to work as hard to complete some of those tasks. One of the things that we run into is the future of the department as we grow. Since we've opened Station 93 in 2012, we've not expanded any of the service. We still have 3 fire suppression units and 3 ambulances in service. So all the growth that the town of Zionsville has had in the last decade, we have not caught up as far as responses and fire trucks and everything. What this does, that takes us to a level to where when we get to the point that we need to add fire stations or add apparatus into a district, we're not going for a big ask of that. I need 20 people to open a fire station. This gets us to the level that we're providing the standard and being able to say, if we don't have as many people off duty or we don't have the injuries or things, we can actually go and show that we can expand some of the services in those areas that need it. And that's one of the things that's coming up right now. We've talked about even in the last meeting that we had, the incidents that we've had at the schools. You know, we've received a lot of information. Wow, it seems like it's taken a while for your apparatus to get there. Because we have not expanded those services since 2012, the amount of call volume has gone up by 25%, which means that it's a higher likelihood
especially in some of our districts that are busier than the others, that you may have an out-of-district engine or an out-of-district ambulance coming in. So that response time is outside of our goal that we have for the department. So adding these people really gets us in a position that in the event that we have staffing that's adding it back to the maximum, we may be able to provide another service in that, much like the chief talked about that tactical shift. We would be able to add that service where we may need it most while preparing to move into another station in the future as that development continues.
Jason,
Yes, sir.
two questions, I guess. One is, what in theory would be a timing of a fourth station?
In the budget this year, there's a request for land acquisition to secure the land for it. You would see that in 2025 for opening in 2026, 2027 to be able to add that fourth fire station. Other things, again, jump down the cap a little bit, we'll come back to this, is that Fire Station 91 currently is in a position of disrepair, needs to be raised and addressed. Currently, right now, no plans are asking to move that fire station. It is centrally located. It serves the right number of rooftops within the area. So those are two big capital items out there on the horizon.
And then you talked about 3-man, which is 4, or 3-person, which is 4-person trucks. I'm a little confused how that could help response time. If you've got a 4-person truck and that truck is on a run at 91 and there's another issue at 91, you're still going to be pulling from that 293 to bring that truck in, right?
Certainly. What it does, what that preparation staffing to a level to where we are not trying to meet the standard. And then as we're building other stations, I have an ask for 25 people to open a station and get us to a level. So we're kind of balancing two different things right now. And we're getting the personnel prepared now. So the ask when we open the station is not going to be as great to meet that need, because it's going to take us about 10 months plus to get firefighters even able to respond. So what we may end up having to do is we don't want to go, I have an immediate need to build a physical structure and immediate need to fully hire a full station. If I can get some seasoned people there, we can do some shifting adjustments and try and make that work.
Is there, I understand it's going to be a hard sell for me, only from a budget standpoint, right? That we're trying to staff now for a station in 3 years, and we've got that grant expiring too, right? For the 6 firefighters.
Certainly. And understand that the staffing request is not the staffing for the station. The staffing request now is to get us to that maximum level of what we are currently operating at.
Yeah, I understand that. But part of the ask sounded to me like, though, once you're at that maximum level, you can cherry pick's the wrong word, but you can at least then maybe draw down some of those resources for a new station as you backfill.
It would
Right?
be my hope not to, but chief.
That's what I'm saying, not necessarily, because then you're putting yourself right back in the situation we have now, where we're not meeting industry standards, and you're putting individual lives at risk from health, labor standpoint perspective, is that the industry standard is for individuals. We're operating sub-industry standards at this time, so we're trying to build that back up to the 4.
So we're not attacking two things all at once.
So do you have, or can you provide kind of complementary cities, Whitestown, Carmel, Noblesville, Fishers, like who's 3-person versus who 4-person in terms of, I get the standard, right? But I get the budget limitations of trying to understand one thing's a standard, but are most communities exceeding that standard, or most communities unfortunately falling behind that standard purely because of budgetary restrictions?
We can research that for budget.
Okay, that'd be helpful.
Absolutely.
I think I'd also like to just understand, I remember in fall of 2020, when we were going through fire department needs, there was I think it was like in Arizona, some type of standard test that you guys were going through. And at that time, the rationalization for additional firefighters was to have 4 people on for purposes of operational. 2 people go in, 2 people come out. If 2 people go in, now 1 person's left with the truck. Can't happen. You always have somebody kind of stand on the sidelines, so to speak. So I think from my perspective, it would also be kind of just procedurally, if these folks aren't, how does that work with the operations?
Counselors, do you have any interest in looking at the run data itself in terms of how many calls are going for a medical purpose and how many are going to put out a fire? Because I think that's changed. And I think that has an impact in terms of the actual equipment that we purchase. And I'm curious about that, and I just thought I'd throw that out for your thoughts.
It doesn't hurt if it's a 3-person versus a 4-person crew. The run data, I think, would sort of be agnostic. It certainly shows on the depreciation of the vehicles.
Yep. Mhm.
Certainly wouldn't turn it down.
Yeah.
The additional portion of the staffing is for 3 administrative positions. Currently, we've taken a firefighter off the companies and having them provide a training captain role with the recruit classes. We anticipate for the foreseeable future is having to maintain that position. And that'd be the first backfill position. A return of the planning chief is a position which we had within the administrative structure of the fire department. We'd like to bring that back. And then also the administrative assistant position that we lost a few years back. I'd like to bring that back and help offset some of that workload. One of the things we are seeing within our fleet service division, remember last year, we were able to add one individual new employee besides our grant. Our grant funded all of our new employees last year, and that was for a mechanic. Now, what we're seeing is that for the first time in over 14 months, our work orders for emergency vehicles has gone from 80 down to below 40. So we've cut that number in half with the addition. Now, the one thing that we're struggling with is that the paperwork and the documentations that relate to individuals performing that work and making sure our record keeping is in stack. So we need to make sure and provide the ministerial support to those positions to help support that. Other increase.
Also, so there's 2 more questions. Sorry, lots of questions. One is, this is gonna be a takeaway. Can you sort of give us a sense of, again, peer communities from the percentage of staffing where we are at administration relative to other communities? Are we staff administrative light, administrative heavy? That would be helpful. Is there also, we sort of talked about apparatus, is there any plans for the rescue truck we have at 91 to bring that into full-time service, or is that TBD?
It is part of the plan. That staffing does not allow us to be able to bring it into a full-time staffing as of yet. Those are part of the future needs within the organization. And it kind of go back to, I think it was 2020, we went through, Josh Frost and Mark Park prepared a couple of different staffing plans. And if you remember when we were right before the grant request went in, the staffing numbers for the fire department were needs of 13 individual staff. And our grant request last year, we were only able to fund 6 of those individuals. So this is part of that carryover with not addressing the staffing as the organization continue to multiply each year. But we'd be happy to provide not only the requests that you have, but also the mayor's request for statistical runs and how we're trying to catch up, if you would, and make sure that we're able to put the right number of fire trucks and ambulances and EMS people on the scene of those needs within the community.
There's 2 years left on that grant. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That pays 90% of the cost.
100%. So those are the other components in the staff. There are additional items within the operating expense of the fire department. There are corresponding uniform fire protective gear, budget requests within the budget. Some of the other important items is making sure we're continuing to take care of our own individuals. Within our medical testing line item, there are 2 significantly important items that we'd like to see added in next year's budget. One of those is cancer screening for firefighters. As most of you are aware, I've heard some of the presentations from our labor group or been around. Firefighters are 60% greater to develop cancer than the general population, and making sure we're providing those screenings would help those individuals identify that early and seek medical treatment to make sure that those are not career ending or worse. The second component is just as equally important to the fire department, and that is taking care of our own. We've worked very hard with some vendors to get some preliminary cost projections to bring in some wellness services to the fire department, and that is through clinical psychologists and providing opportunities for our staff as a whole to meet with them on an annual basis and talk about their mind and body. You're probably well aware that we on an annual basis send our firefighters out for all the medical testing, absent cancer screenings, but we look at their heart, their vision, their hearing, and we do that on an annual basis and have done that since we started the fire department. The component that we have been missing is this missing vital piece here, and that is the mind and body component, is bringing somebody in and allowing the employees to be able to spend some time with those clinical professionals to make sure that they have things in place to be able to help manage what they see on a day-to-day so they can become an effective employee for the department, not only for today, but for tomorrow, and also when they leave the job. So that they don't have these things lingering around. Something that we're seeing, We just came back from Kansas City for the FRI concert, which is the annual Fire Chiefs Conference. And most, not most, but almost 50% of the departments are trying to find a way to actually embed a clinical psychologist within public safety as a whole to make it a full-time employee so that that individual can be there on a day-to-day basis to help them through some of those needs. That is a rather minimal ask within the fire department budget. It's a $30,000 ask. In relative terms, the total fire department budget ask, we understand it's pretty significant with the staff component, but I would say that those two components are very important to both labor and management, and that is the cancer screening and the mental health. We'll talk about here a little more about apparatus replacement vehicles. While our equipment replacement program is able to purchase the vehicles because of delays in those purchasing, and then the manufacturer's delays and be able to deliver that apparatus, we are anticipating significant increases in our fleet service maintenance costs. So that is included in this year's budget. And then also facility repairs. And these repairs that were planned are only at Fire Station 292 and 293. We're not planning anything beyond the basics for Fire Station 291 until we have a written plan in place about how we would raise or replace that fire station. We're talking about things such as apparatus parking lot failures, stormwater drains sinking and curbs falling off, significant repairs within the fire stations themselves. In our operating budget, we have a small capital line item, and that is to address office furniture for our employees. Currently, we have fire inspectors that are using tables that Bobby's in the back of the room, we borrowed from this room because we don't have any office furniture for them. So we would like to purchase office chairs for the office and then 2 new desks for our fire prevention staff. Move on the next slide. This is a inspectable locations, seen a significant increase. As we look at these needs within the organization, the other thing that our fire prevention community risk reduction division prepares is a weekly report. And our weekly report right now of active projects in the town of Zions over 19 pages. 19 pages of active commercial residential projects happening in our community. And as these projects come online, the estimated population surge to the community over the next 1 to 3 years of them being built and occupied is nearly 8,000 people. That's what's in the pipeline today. That's what's on paper and coming our way. These are the needs that we have to be able to try and keep pace with. Next slide. We're very familiar with this after year. We put together a well-known equipment replacement plan to try and maintain our fleet for next year in 2024's request is a fire engine and ambulance, and then 5 staff cars. Also, as part of that is all of our self-contained breathing apparatus, the air packs the firefighters wear on their backs, come to end of life next year. So we have planned to replace those. There's $550,000 there. And at the bottom of the items, I think Councilor Garrett, you asked about whereas the land acquisition and some engineering design services or an allotment of funds be able to design some of those facilities in the future.
Chief, can all of those come from 426? Line 426 firefighters?
They're eligible to be there. The first time we've seen the revenue projections for the equipment replacement fund. I think it's going to be a little heavy, so there's got to be some trimming within that.
Question on the trucks, you guys do by mileage or years? I mean, I said 7 years. 6 years old.
Yeah, we would like for that to occur, but keep in mind is once they come off of primary use, they go back into reserve status, so they're not gone. So that fire engine that gets replaced comes back
I
in.
was talking about like the Tahoes.
Yeah, most of those are 90,000 miles. All the vehicles we have there will be 90,000 plus. Some of them probably over 100,000 miles by the time they get replaced. And our replacement plan calls for that. The only one that's a little bit newer there is the replacement of the battalion chief vehicles. Currently, our fleet mechanic does not have a vehicle to be able to use. So our intent there is to remove that F-250 down and have our second mechanic. Because the problem we have now is we only have 1 truck. So as we send mechanics out to different places, they don't have any way to transport their tools from place to place.
You can get a Tahoe now.
Yeah, we're municipal pricing. They were purchased 2 years ago for $32,000.
I think you just answered this, but so 426, the cumulative fire fund, this proposed budget has a negative $1.2 million balance at the end.
Yeah,
So is that, Are you gonna fix that or are we gonna fix that?
I think we're going to collectively look at that, see how we fix that.
Okay. And then do any of the promotions we just did today generate year needs, or those all within?
All within. Other side.
As we get into looking at all the requests for increase in personnel across departments, I know that that's going to be a big ask from every department. Sometimes we forget about the impact we can have on the little line item areas. So I'm looking at just things that seem a little out of line with, but you've explained a lot of it already, but things like a $60,000 increase, 38% increase in uniform costs, and I appreciate the drop in vehicles out of 426, but then we have a 374,000 increase in equipment out of 426. So is there an opportunity to make impacts on that? I hate to horse trade operational and capital costs for personnel.
Yeah, I think the difficulty is the operating budget is the one that has the least amount of revenue coming in to support it. So if there's any shift, to try and move things to the capital line item, that's going to be the better effort to take a look at that. And we also have, I'm not sure where Tim may have placed them, we also have cash balances that had been placed when we brought back the fire fund. So there's some other money that would need to be looked at and see how we can do this and what can happen timing wise.
I appreciate that. The problem would be that the operating costs would recur year after year, and in that versus something that's capital outlay, we have the funds for it to be able to spend that now. So if we're running in a deficit year over year, it's obviously not going to be sustainable.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present the annual budget for community and economic development. Much of our budget is no change. We're not proposing any changes in a large portion of our budget. However, there are several things that we are asking for an increase for 2024. You may know that my department, in collaboration with Public Works, are trying to phase out the use of BLN engineering. Currently, developers, petitioners will require the need of, as part of the plan review for of engineering review. So we're under contract with BLN to provide plan review and engineering services for individual projects, which we pay initially, but then are reimbursed by the developer through Public Works. We being the town are reimbursed. So our current budget for BLN is about $300,000, within $300,000 per year. Typically, about this time of year, we have expended that money. And typically, toward the end of the year, we ask the town council for an additional appropriation, and often in the extent of $300,000. So in this budget, what I'm proposing to do is, instead of having to go through the process of additional appropriation, or at least avoid that process, to ask for that money up front for a total of $600,000. That's a significant part of our proposed budget for 2024, is to increase the line item from $300,000 to $600,000, so that we need not approach the town council, or perhaps need not approach the town council toward the end of the year for an additional appropriation. Again, that money is 98% of that money is reimbursed by the developer petitioner. That extra 2% that is not reimbursable or not billable to a particular petitioner, it's usually some type of administrative process. For example, the BLN may provide some services or some reports to the Plan Commission that are not billable to a particular developer or petitioner. So that's why I say 98% of those costs are reimbursable to the town. This year also, for 2024, we're also interested in diving into a comprehensive plan update. Our current comprehensive plan is actually about 20 years old. It's the product of patchwork that the town achieved upon annexation of Perry and Eagle Townships and Unit Townships over, I think, between 2010 and 2015. That activity occurred, in which case the town just essentially cut and paste the comprehensive plan language and maps from Boone County into the town comprehensive plan. You may know the comprehensive plan is required by the state of Indiana to be adopted by a local unit of government in order to have zoning. So if we want zoning in the town of Zionsville, then it's necessary to have a comprehensive plan. It should be updated for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that when developers and other interests or residents even want to consider coming to Zionsville, they will often look at a long-range comprehensive plan to see if it's current and whether the town is planning for growth and where it's planning for growth. Also, it's a comprehensive plan is a wonderful and excellent mechanism for inviting public participation in the long-range vision or growth strategy for the town of Zionsville. An adopted comprehensive plan is a fantastic aid for staff to know where the community intends to grow in Zionsville and how it intends to grow. And also is a fantastic mechanism for town council members to understand how the community perceives itself in terms of future growth and where that growth should occur. It's a fantastic process for inviting public input as well as input from our decision makers in determining a future growth strategy for Zionsville. So that's in our budget. We currently have, that's about $150,000 increase from our current consulting line item to $300,000 for consulting. Also, our legal fees have gone up considerably this year. About this time right now, we've burned through our legal fees about $50,000. So we'd like to double our legal fees to about $100,000. That's the result of a lot of questions about code enforcement that have risen, some training for staff from our legal counsel to inform staff about what types of decisions and findings are defensible to the Board of Zoning Appeals and Town Plan Commission, and also some challenging legal questions that we've had about some legacy projects that are in the town of Zionsville. So we're asking for a 100% or a $50,000 increase in our legal line item. Also, my office is located on the second floor of the building. My staff, 100% of my staff is located on the ground floor. When I'm able to get downstairs, and which I often do, I spend a lot of time downstairs just getting caught up where staff is on projects, what's going on administratively in the office. There's a lot of opportunity for me to be better plugged in and engaged with my own staff if I'm located physically on the first floor with them. So I'm asking for a $15,000 line item to cover the cost of building me an office space downstairs. I've talked to Bobby Adams in Public Works. He estimates about $10,000 in aluminum and glass for constructing me an office space downstairs. And then I've asked for about $5,000 more for other office improvements downstairs, having to do with partitions and relocating some office space downstairs for a total of $15,000. I'm asking for additional salary position. Salary position as a senior planner. I already mentioned BLN and taking BLN away from the plan review process and giving that to staff. By doing so, we accomplish a couple things. One is that we eliminate this accounting process that we currently do with BLN. We're really providing an accounting service for BLN by paying their fees up front and then seeking reimbursement from the development community or petitioning community. But that additional, the work that the plan review work will fall on staff. I've estimated that we need about 30 to 32 hours of additional full-time staff to compensate for the loss of BLN. And so I've proposed a senior planner position to assist with the plan review. That position could also be notched down to an associate planner if we find someone who can meet the skill requirements for the position without having to pay the senior planner salary. So I'm asking for a senior planner position, but that could actually be an associate planner depending on who we might be able to hire. I'm also asking for funding, which I think will go through the IT budget, where staff is interested in a number of things. One is we're interested in having a public-facing GIS, Geographic Information Systems platform. Right now, zoning and parcel data is not readily available to the general public. By going through GIS, and ESRI is the vendor for GIS, the general public can find parcel data and zoning information and other information relating to their property without having to contact staff for that information. So we think that would be a fantastic tool for the general public and for staff to provide information to the general public. We're also interested in a permitting / petitioning project tracking system supplied through CityWorks. What the system would do would help us better track projects being processed through our department. Those would be building permits, those would be petitions through the Plan Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals, and code enforcement, and inspections, in case I didn't mention inspections. This system would help us monitor and track the progress of each of these projects, and would help us, the staff, better manage our workload. And then lastly, with regard to the IT budget, we're asking for about $4,000 for a program called Resimplify. That's an economic development tool that would be public facing to allow potential realtors or interests that are looking into coming or considering Zionsville as a place to put their business, to find real estate that's available through this portal, and provide important information, track parcel size, zoning, value, to interests who may be considering coming to Zionsville. It's a relatively inexpensive $4,000 program that would be accessible through the town website. I think I've hit on the essentials here. Otherwise, I mentioned at the very beginning, there's several things here that have no change, not changing our budget for 2024. I'd be pleased to take your questions.
CityWorks.
Yep.
Is that forward facing toward the public?
Yes, right. So persons can apply online and track the progress of their petition.
It's to eliminate and increase the work on current staff by adding one senior planner.
Correct.
This conversation, we talked about PUDs, working through those. What's the solution for understanding the ins and outs of PUD?
Right, yeah, PUDs are a popular mechanism for developers to rezone property. Of course, we have straight zoning, regular zoning districts in the town already as referenced in our zoning map. PUDs are a way for developers to, in some sense, to circumvent standard zoning districts and apply for a unique zoning district called a planned unit development to often achieve higher densities in exchange for higher architectural standards. That's a common practice, not just in Zionsville, but throughout the state, probably throughout the country. Developers ask for higher density through PUDs in exchange for offering goodies like higher architecture or additional amenities that would normally not be required in our zoning code. And that would be, that would not be, we're not designated as a senior planner's task. That's currently a task handled by our existing senior planner, Roger Kilmer. So no, we anticipate seeing probably more PUDs. Certainly the senior planner, as I estimated, just 30 or 32 hours for VLN. If we were able to hire that person at a 40-hour work week scale, then that additional 8 hours can certainly help with reviewing and analyzing PUD ordinances.
Something like the GIS system, are you trading somebody calling in asking about the zoning of their parcel property or somebody else's, for how do I use this forward-facing program?
We're not trading. We would still provide the service of someone calling. However, people soon learn that they can find this information online, and often it will be third-party developing interests who want to know, they're looking for a place, for example, to put a dentist office. They can find that through the CityWorks program. They can get an active view of existing zoning, parcel data, surrounding zoning, without having to contact their office. And that, I think, it's a great economic development tool as well.
Mike, I was just curious, in the event that the form-based code gets approved, are we positioned appropriately with staffing to operate the current zoning and the new zoning for the next decade or so. And my other question is, with, I don't disagree, the likely need for comprehensive plan, but it seems like maybe the tail's wagging the dog here. If we're going for these before.
Oh, I see. Well, the form-based code is intended to replace existing zoning ordinance. But you're right, there'll be some legacy zoning districts, in particular PUDs, that'll continue, and we'll continue to get more PUDs. The straight zoning districts would be replaced with the new zoning zoning code. I think from staff's perspective, we believe that a comprehensive plan project probably would have been more useful in terms of long-range visioning for growth, for future growth in the town, than a new zoning code. Though they, in other sense, they operate independent of each other. The comprehensive plan is a vision for growth. The zoning code is a means of implementing development standards and development regulations. The comprehensive plan will tell the town and those who are interested in looking at it, how the town intends to grow over time. The zoning code is a snapshot of building setbacks, building heights, park sign standards, landscaping standards, all those things that are tangible, but not visionary. So yes, I think that we would have probably supported doing a comprehensive plan first, but that doesn't mean that a zoning ordinance like the form-based code should necessarily have preceded the comprehensive plan. Did I answer your question, or do you have more?
Well, I just want to make sure if this thing gets pushed through, that we've got the appropriate staff. And we get to your point.
Oh, okay.
We're going to have a decade or more of dealing with both scenarios. So.
Yeah. With regard to the form-based code, if it gets passed, it will mean more work for staff, just in terms of learning it, applying it, administration, and educating the public and developers who are familiar with our existing ordinance. So there's going to be a peak demand from staff to convert, mentally and forms and so on to the new form-based code. Thank you very much.
Sorry, we're starting with, I wonder why those numbers are so low. This is a portion of DPW that's funded out of the general fund, facilities maintenance division. There are a couple increases in supplies. We expect service and maintenance contracts to go up on both the elevator and some HVAC systems here. Other than that, it's modest increases. I don't know if my guys here for that, but that's the DPW facilities portion. Takes care of town hall and the other maintenance facilities. The GO bonds, those are just refunding, correct? Or those are just the bond payments on the 2018 general obligation bond. What I want to touch on here is local road and street. The local road and street, and what you will probably see here shortly in the motor vehicle highway restricted funds are revenue to the town, basically the state, an alternate distribution of the state gasoline tax that can only be used for road rehabilitation, preservation projects. So we have a pretty robust balance in those. I don't really think that there's reason to keep a robust balance in a fund that can only be used to fix roads. Even with that $750,000, that increase from 500 to 750, the fund balance is still going to be at or around that 20%. In my opinion, both the local road and street and the motor vehicle highway, there's no such thing as savings, only unbuilt projects and unimproved roadways. So we'll go on to the next one to get to the meat and potatoes here. This is the DPW Public Works, and remember, this is pretty much everybody else except for facilities maintenance and stormwater, which is also held out separately. In the personnel services, we are looking to include 2 new employees. One of those is a labor position, which is directly a request, given that we're going to take on 644 single-family homes and a couple miles of roads if this were your next round of transition of services takes place. So asking for one person, one additional labor to take care of the direct services that we provide seasonally to 644 new homes. The other position is within the engineering division. And as Mike started discussing, we are looking to phase out the contractual relationship and reliance on being longest enough on just day-to-day operations. I did a 10-month analysis of what we are billed and then turn around and bill developers for construction inspection on new development. And it's about $390,000 a year based on the 10 months that I looked at. So we're going to proposing to bring in one new site inspector, and we would fund that position 200%. We would cut our fees to the development community, but we would also make sure that we're covering this employee as well as all fringe and the supporting vehicles necessary for him. It's a discussion to get in later. It's going to focus on the fee schedule, but we'll have a much more detailed discussion on that in the future. One other thing you'll see, there's a big uptick we have in, let me find it, in our travel training and seminars line. You'll see that it jumps up from about 3,500 to 60,000. As we have 14 to 16 employees that we need to get through a CDLA endorsement licensing program. Our trucks are getting bigger, our trailers are getting bigger. So we want to get our entire street division, including myself, equipped with CDL driver's licenses. So that's just going to be a one-time peak as we get everything, or hopefully get most people through that program next year. Other increases are just as we're seeing increases in our vehicle and equipment maintenance lines. But I did want to point out that one kind of odd anomaly. And within the supplies and services and charges, about $26,000 of the budget this year is increased supplies for assuming responsibility of these transition areas. Heavy trash fees will increase. Fuel costs will increase as we travel to service these homes. There are no particularly unique increases in stormwater. Stormwater, everything is basically staying the same, with the exception of increases for costs of living. The big spike again, we do have 2 stormwater employees that would be enrolled in, or hopefully pursuing their CDL driving. That's about $4,000 per person to get that endorsement training. Next, please.
Lance.
Yes.
So there really wasn't any increase in storms, but the contractual services is up 127%. Is that related to
in the
BLS?
stormwater?
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing up your question. That is an increase. We are proposing $65,000 to supplement our in-house street sweeping. And we believe that $65,000 is enough to sweep all of the curbed sections of streets within the current urban service district twice a year. Thank you for that great question. Okay. Capital outlays there again, that's the motor vehicle highway restricted fund. Again, motor vehicle highway is funded by the state from various small resources, but the big one being the gasoline tax. The town has always propped up the operations of MVH by assigning a certain portion of the property tax revenue that the town enjoys. But the MVH restricted is 50% of that MVH that comes to town. It's got to be carved off the top, set aside, and you can't buy people with it. You can't buy equipment with it. You have to fix roads. So that MVH restricted can only be used, and we only use this in our contracted street repairs annually. CCD is kind of the dumping ground of all new requests. And I don't know if the next slide is going to break out, but mostly in that CCD, we have the replacement of some failing equipment, 20-year-old vehicles, 20-year-old dump trucks, our bucket truck, 20 years old. Our tractor that we use to mow alongside roadways was here when I got here. So who knows? No, I'm just kidding. It's about 23, 24 years old. In the capital, I believe it's included in DPW CCD. I had reached out to President Plunkett, NDOT plans next year to replace the Ford Road Bridge over 865. And they gave us kind of the NDOT standard sidewalk across it, which is, anybody remembers back on Main Street, Zionsville Road, how narrow that was, that's what you get. So right now we have a verbal agreement with NDOT that the town would fund a 10-foot pedestrian element on one side of this new bridge. So that's about 350,000 based on current estimates. We have 250,000 and 120,000 for 370,000 in land acquisition for new pathways that are currently designed. We need to purchase some new rights of way, and we'll get in. I believe there's a map coming up to show that. We've held out $400,000 or requested $400,000 to start some construction on the Oak Street corridor pathway. You appropriated $75,000 in a corridor study in 2023. We're starting to see the early results of that. So this is purely a placeholder, but we believe we can identify a section and actually get a section built for $400,000 along Oak Street next year. And there's about $80,000 remaining to purchase in the wayfinding signage package. We are acquiring about $150,000 worth of wayfinding signage within the rights of way of the town of Zionsville. This isn't to step on any of Jared's sign programs. But we are, there are 2 monument signs that we're not going to be considered for purchase this year that we'd like to purchase next year.
Hey, Lance,
Yes.
you mentioned this is the Ford Road Bridge over 865.
Yes.
There's not a pathway on the north or south side of that. So why are we spending money to have it cross?
Because the design life of a bridge is in excess of 70 years.
Okay.
And I think within 70 years, I hope we have a pathway down Ford Road.
We'll see.
I joke that I won't be here. I'm really confident I won't be here at the end of that bridge's life. Again, we talked about the 2 new staff. This is not the utility budget, but next year we're going to start implementing the upgrades at the plant, the wastewater plant, based on the recent capacity and operational studies. We talked about the NDOT pedestrian facility on the bridge, the balance of the wayfinding signage way, and within rights of way. Oh, and the transportation or thoroughfare plan update. Our current thoroughfare plan is a 2011 transportation plan. We'd like to get that updated. One of the important things here is it starts to refine the vision of what we want to look like if and when we start considering multi-lane roadways and upgrades. But it also plays the important role of establishing what development has to contribute as far as rights of way widths, road frontage improvements. So this is an enabling document that we turn to routinely to say, you want to build this development on this road, you need to give us 20 more feet of right of way. And we talked about some equipment replacement, and I think there might be, if you go to the next slide. This is the Oak Street corridor pathway that E3 Engineering has been looking at for us, that we are considering for a pathway project over the next several years. Obviously, we have to eat this elephant one bite at a time. But a reminder that we funded $75,000 for this year to study this corridor. If you go on next, please.
Hey, Lance, when does the pathway get paid by DPW versus parks?
If it's along a roadway within right of way, then we generally take on that project. This is the pathway here on the left was brought up this morning at your meeting. There at the Whitestown Road pathway. Cobblestone Lakes is off to the right of your screen. You can see Maple Lawn Farmstead. This is under design, has been designed, and this is where we will need to purchase some additional right of way to get this pathway constructed then in 2025. As a companion project is the 875 pathway, which is working towards Trailside Elementary School connectivity, particularly for Rock Bridge, but we now have the new elementary school, sports complex, so we've got a lot of demand to get to this area. That is going to require quite a bit of additional right of way. So next year is an advancement of pathway projects that are already underway. Okay, next slide.
So is all this falling under the CCD infrastructure act?
I believe so, yes. Most of these are replacements of old vehicles. I will call out some that are a little bit different than just a replacement situation. A vacuum trailer unit, our stormwater division would like to purchase exactly what it sounds like. Currently, we can clean out, we can flush lines, but we can't capture material out of our storm sewer system when we clean it. So they would like to have a trailer unit to allow us to do that. A vehicle for an inspector, the new position I mentioned, which would be entirely funded by development fees. We'll need a vehicle if that position and budget is approved. Currently, we have one vehicle shared for facilities maintenance. Again, this is when two employees go to two different places, they have their own trucks. The dump plow salt truck is a replacement of a smaller dump truck. Bucket truck, which I touched upon. A grapple truck is for lifting heavy items, and it's just what it sounds like. It's almost like a talk toy. You can just reach an arm out, pluck it in, put it in the back of your vehicle. The mower tractor is our primary roadside mower. The leaf collection vehicle and the pickup plow truck, those are directly attributable to the demands for service based on transitioning the three areas that were mentioned earlier by the chief. We will have to provide direct services to all these homeowners. So we're looking to expand our leaf collection capacity to take on 600 new homes, and to accompany that one new labor employee. That person would like to need to have a pickup plow truck for that person, primarily for snow plow needs.
Lance, have you ever done the analysis of third party doing the mowing instead of ourselves?
We do a combination of it. But that tractor everything's multi-use. It also runs our tillers. So when we have a project of our own, we swap out the mower portion for a Harley rake to till to restore our project areas, and get those seeded. So it's not just for mowing, it's multi-service, multi-function. Is that the end of us yet? Great. Okay. Any questions?
I see a couple replacements. Basically new, right? So are we gonna have storage issues?
No. Most of our vehicles are, the smaller ones will be take home. Our inspectors will take home those vehicles. The grapple truck, we currently use our space out on the I-75 facility to the greatest extent. So we kind of rotate things in and out over there. If it's not needed for a while, we'll put it out there.
One other quick question. So I may have missed this MBH fund, 201, there's a 1,614% increase. Is that the, I'm sorry, it says travel, training, seminars. Is that the?
That's the CDL.
CDL, thank you. Okay.
All right, Parks and Recreation. So a couple of lines are proposed exponentially larger for next year. One of them that is continuous would be the staffing suggestion and recommendation for the department. That is multifaceted, both for our parks, but also for our recreation team. In our park maintenance team, since the last full-time staffing expansion, we have added 2 miles of rail trail, 4 pickleball courts, 57 acres of parkland, a dog park, 4 playgrounds, 2 shelters, and soon 1 trailhead facility. So each of those items not only taking daily maintenance, but also preventative maintenance and upkeep as well. And we're just falling behind. With the 2023 budget, we proposed a larger item of part-time assistance, and that has greatly helped that effort, but we are still behind on the demands and expectations of our community. We are Parks and Recreation. We also are proposing 1 part-time naturalist to be promoted to full-time, and that is due to the increased hours that our Nature Center serves the community. With the original staffing in the Nature Center, it was open 2 days a week at an old school facility. Now we are in the library in a partnership with them and are open 5 days a week In 2022, we had over 14,000 visitors to our nature center. And so far this year, we have had over 10,000. So a steady flow of traffic to expand the natural education of our community that we've built over the last 20 years. Worst case scenario today, as a staff member is sick or there is a conflicting scheduling problem, we have to close the nature center, or our director of recreation steps in, dividing her already busy schedule to cover that facility. So with the additional hours of that position, we could have a little more resilience for call-ins, as well as continue to program in the community. Under our services, again, there's a large jump. Part of that is for the design services we plan to intend for next year. With the 5-year master plan will soon be before you for adoption. We are looking to provide a refresh to the Lincoln Park facility there at Main Street. Lincoln Park is just a little tired. The vegetation is overgrown and needs to be reestablished. The pavilion could use some restoration work, as well as the pathways into the park are non-ADA compliant and provide regular bricks that go out of conformity and can provide tripping hazards. So just the design work to refresh that and give it a new life as it complements our downtown. Also, the design of the Turkey Foot Bridge rehabilitation. This would be to replace the wooden approaches with concrete abutments. Due to the climate of this bridge being heavily vegetated, a lot of moisture, that wood greatly experiences rot, and it is in the condition it is today. While it remains safe for pedestrian access, we are unable to provide emergency services to utilize that bridge in case of an incident. So this would be for the design and rehabilitation of that bridge structure. Additionally, to explore adding more amenities to our park system within our existing parks, the design of a Mulberry Fields concession stand and indoor practice field. The concession stand has the opportunity to be funded in total by impact fees and would provide a year-round restroom at the park. Currently, Mulberry Fields is our most activated park. The field, the splash pad being a big hit throughout the year, and the sledding hill in the winter. So to date, we only have the restroom near the splash pad, which is seasonal. So it's only operational for the summer months, at which point we provide a portable restroom on the site. This structure would allow for that increased use, as well as the pickleball courts that have brought new life to the park. And all of those users would have a restroom facility, as well as a concession stand that could be staffed by our team as a revenue generating mechanism, and provide concession stand services for the organized sports that utilize Mulberry Fields. The indoor practice space would be a partnership with the organized sports of our community. Within the 5-year master plan, we provided a survey specifically to our organized sports to best identify their needs. Several organizations listed the need for more practice spaces, specifically in the winter months. And we've identified a partner that is willing to provide a capital campaign for the majority of the funding of that structure should we move forward with that partnership. There would be a lot of exploring with that. We would need to come up with an operations plan that can allow for the continued use of that building with fees for those organized sports. But when not in service with sports, that facility would be open to the public for winter recreation or just the multi-use nature of that facility at Mulberry Fields. Finally, the design of the Elm Street Green Lions Park connector. To date, we have several parks in our village, 2 of which are the most popular and Lions Park. To navigate between the 2, you currently have to walk on Elm Street on the road. And each time I visit our parks, I find our residents walking on that road. This would be a connection between Lions Park to Elm Street Green and provide a roadway opportunity for residents to travel between the parks. This connection would also connect 3 parks, as Creekside Nature is already connected to Lions Park. We began conversations with the Lions Park board and are working towards that easement and hoping to fund this problem in our project in the next year. Additionally, with our existing capital allocation that we receive each year through park improvements, we would begin adding wayfinding signage to our parks and our trails, purchase a maintenance chipper Historically, the Department of Public Works had 2 chippers. They are down to 1, and our Parks team has been asking to borrow that more and more throughout the years. So we are proposing to purchase our own chipper that should the Department of Public Works chipper go down, they could borrow ours, but we continue to utilize that piece of machinery more and more as we combat invasives in our parks. Next slide. Kind of on autopilot for this conversation, but I did wanted to bring up with the passing of the bond that the design and engineering and permitting for phase 1 of the Carpenter Nature Preserve would begin as well in the 2024 year. Happy to answer any questions.
So if you had the ask for the 2023, and I don't have the numbers total up, do you know what the parks capital outlays appropriations would have, or not, budget ask would have been under those dashed items? You only have 314,000 improvements that were in 2023. Everything on your capital outlays for you was zero. So
Right.
what all would have, how much would have gone under in there? Because I'm just trying to compare what the ask would have been in 2023 to what the budgetary capital outlay ask is for 2024. That's one question. The other question, services, that increase, do you anticipate that 600 somewhere around there to be maintained, or will that drop back to a lower level, I guess, and drop back down?
Yeah, the majority of that is the design work for the bridge, for the Elm Street project, and for those Mulberry facilities. There was a $20,000 increase to contractual services, and that was just based off of this year's spending. We have expanded our mowing contract to continue to utilize our maintenance team in other capacities while exploring contracting out that large task that just takes a lot of hours. There's also minor increases to our utility lines. So with the new trailhead facility, we anticipate more electricity, more water to be utilized.
Is there, Jared, this is not a statement toward you, but is there a way that like those design services can go as a capital outlay? Because if I sort of look through this entire budget of everyone, it's very rare someone asks for less money the next year. My fear is if we sort of approve all these one-off contractual services, the next year the request will be, oh, I'm looking to maintain it at $600,000. You've got 11 new council and 4 new members. One-off things versus, Alex, you and I both agree on this, like one-off things versus stable things become very important. Knowing that's a one-time thing is fine. Worrying, and again, this is not just here, but just in general, if that goes up here, it just stays there in perpetuity, sort of become.
Absolutely.
So in general question, so I'm creating a spreadsheet with all the contractual services included in it. And one department had a decrease in contractual services, 3 stayed neutral, and about 11 went up. And the total of that increase in contractual services is about $1.25 million. And it's very hard to figure out from the presentations how much of this is actual one-time cost versus recurring costs. And that's why I asked the question of 170,000 in contractual services last year versus 60 this year. And to Josh's point, that I know we can't reclassify that as capital outlays, but it seems more in that line of one-time cost versus recurring that we would have to do operational.
Happy to break that out.
And I would say that for all departments, right, not just you.
Yeah.
So I will understand that. Passing a negative budget, what is the next council inheriting? Sustainability standpoint.
Okey-dokey. Administration. This department includes both the executive administrative assistant for the mayor and the deputy mayor, as well as the deputy mayor. So Carol and Andy's position are found in this particular budget. The contractual services include legal, legislative affairs, and PR. you'll see that the 24 request on all those areas with the exception of the humans has stayed flat. Oh, supplies went up a little bit. Presumably, the new folks coming in will want to get some Zionsville swag. They'll probably want to get their favorite pin and maybe a couple of other off items that will be relevant for them. They're getting onboarded with the town.
Hey there, are we still, we sort of found this weird position where like the deputy mayor now makes more than the mayor. Is that? is the
Yes.
proposed Budget.
So the
with
next slide, we want to jump to that one. This is the mayor's budget. So this is what the mayor makes in 2023, and this is what we're proposing for 2024.
So is the deputy mayor then in 2024 budget? I know that doesn't impact you or Deputy Mayor Patel. Is the deputy mayor coming in and making more than the mayor?
I don't actually know that.
Yeah, I thought we reset that. Didn't we reset that in salary ordinance? That we-
The deputy mayor is making more
Yes.
next year.
Yes.
Yes, that is the case.
The mayor's budget has decided to take today's salary and increase as all other employees.
Right. So even though I haven't really necessarily grown my salary the same rate, I made sure that for the incoming mayor, that salary has the same increase as the rest of the employees.
And I know that flip flop has happened because you've not taken raises in years. I don't, it's something to discuss at some point. Do you want the deputy mayor making more than the mayor? It seems weird to me.
There is a perk of the mayor to have a car. I would never want to drive anybody else's car other than my own because I'm a terrible driver. So that I didn't want to take that either. So that's another, perk, I suppose, that adds to the compensation package.
For finance and workers, we're showing some increase in first place. Actually, personal services gone down just a tad bit, even though we're adding an employee. And that's because with our current staffing, some of the benefits that were chosen went down. So that kind of compensated for some of that added expense for the new person that we're hoping to add prior to the end of the year this year. Supplies increase, that's mainly with a few different things. Larger staff with the financial system we're in right now, we have to get pre-printed checks versus a blank check stock. So costs of supplies have just gone up a little bit. Services and charges is pretty close to staying the same. The biggest jump is in contractual services, and that is due to the fact that I would like to have an asset audit done. As far as I know, I don't think the town has ever had one. It's something that definitely needs to happen because that's part of our reporting to the state on our annual financial report is reporting all the assets and what the depreciation is. And right now, we have no way of figuring depreciation on our assets, and not even all of our assets are being tracked. So we need to get to a starting point. And we already have a software that's part of what the Keystone or Voice product. So we need to get to a starting point, have that information loaded in there so that we can begin tracking it properly. One of the other items that I have in there is to digitize ordinances and resolutions. Right now, if you need to search for something, you're sitting on the floor looking through cabinets because we have absolutely no way of searching anything. You hope that somebody can at least give you a time frame of when something took place, so you're not going through everything. But it's something that really needs to take place so it's searchable and be easily obtained. Spend Bridge is a procurement software that I would like to work with after the first of the year. This is something that works in conjunction with our financial software, Keystone or Key Fund. Without going into a bunch of detail, this software would help eliminate manual entry errors, because since it does talk with Key Fund, information from this software basically will automatically download into our financial software. It also allows us to have electronic approvals on any type of purchase, whether it's a service or product. And then they're also in the process of setting this up so it'll work in conjunction with our P cards as well. And one of the things that it'll do for P cards, here again, you're going to have your department head approval of that purchase, even though it's being used by P card, purchased by P card. You're going to have that approval by the department head on the front end versus the back end, how it is now. So those are the three main things as far as the reason for the increase in our budget capital for contractual services.
Sandy, as I'm looking at your budget request, your total salaries only got 4%. Proposed raise is 7%, and you got a new position being filled. Can you kind of explain that? It's going from 476 to 495.
And also dovetail into that, this is a good thing, but then you've got a $40,000 decrease in health insurance costs.
I would have to go back to the spreadsheet that was provided us and just double check those numbers.
Again, this is where a lot of my confusion lays from last year and this year, all the years previous, is that we lump all this into operating costs when you increase your contractual services from 50,000 to 103,600, but it's a one-time cost. It's very hard to figure out how this budget balances out for those big shifts in numbers. Not only that, but capital outlays. Like Jared has 314,000 recurring every year for maintenance, and I know that whatever use drops back into the fund, but it's still just for somebody like me very confusing as to are we actually passing a balanced budget or not. So if we can have those kind of things broken out and so that we can look at it easily from all the departments, I think that would be helpful for us.
Okay, communications budget. So several of the line items are staying the same, and others for one of the rare departments where there's actually some decrease in some of the line items. So as I better calculated the cost of printing and postage on an annual basis, I've been better able to determine the cost of that. It varies a little bit based on the projects that we're doing that year and what kind of outreach we need, but that's the reason for a slight decrease there. So some of the main costs, it's track. So I'm fortunate enough to work with a great local graphic designer, a videographer here right now, Colin, and I have some great local photographers that I work with. So that includes those partnerships. Printing and postage. So if you live in Zionsville, you probably receive our quarterly postcards with updates of things that are happening across all of our departments. So it includes that cost, cost of our annual report, any other special mailers that I send out. Great example would be like the comprehensive plan. We would definitely want to do outreach to residents, not just digital and on social media, but through direct mail. Subscriptions. So those are some of our key annual subscriptions. SurveyMonkey, Constant Contact, which is our email newsletter, our digital flipbook guide, newspaper subscriptions, those are across all departments that many departments have access to. And then promotions is any swag, t-shirts, coffee mugs, those type of things that we order, social media, ad packages, any boosted posts or advertisement in place.
Morning. A little discussion about cybersecurity and our posture for the town of Zionsville for 2024. As we know, cybersecurity threats are everywhere right now. Can't read a paper or a news article without running into somebody having some sort of cyber breach, whether it's ransomware or a data attack of some sort. While ransomware is not the only cyber event the town of Zionsville is concerned with, it's probably one of the biggest ones that would affect daily operations. Part of that is in our 2024 budget to be able to monitor and respond to those types of things. We have developed, basically in response to those cybersecurity threats, the 2024 budget to include personnel, monitoring response, planning, and hardware replacements. As we move into 2024, and we're looking at what our, I guess, what our requirements are for cybersecurity, we are always aiming at something to demonstrate due care. If we end up in litigation, if we end up in some sort of situation where we're having to make payments, one of the first things that's going to be asked is, have we met our responsibility for due care for our data and our network? So in that, we have adopted the Center for Internet Security's controls in their version 8, which is 56 different control keys that we document and we search and we monitor for any kind of events that would be affecting the town. This year's budget, there's a funder request for implementation of various monitoring tools, basically providing the ability to see and react to cyber events as they occur. One of those items is a security and information event monitoring system. There's about $80,000 in there for that. It is not a cheap endeavor. It is a 24/7 monitoring by a third party in a security operations center type fashion. That type of monitoring would alert cyber events to the town as they rise to the top of incidents. Otherwise, they would be handled by the security operations center if they're minor things. What we try and do is keep the amount of labor that we have to throw at this down to a minimum and allow some contractual services with an organization to monitor and help with those things, so we don't end up with a deluge of events coming our direction. One of the other things that we'd be looking to implement is a updated endpoint detection and response. That's, in the old school terms, would have been a traditional antivirus solution, but this is something that's loaded on every single computer that does a lot more than antivirus now. It actually protects the machine from all aspects of things that come in. The next step in our 2024 budget was also planning for resources that we currently use that could be transitioned to the cloud. As we look at cybersecurity incidents, one of the things that we note is that a lot of times it impacts your internal operations, and those internal operations don't survive very well. And one of the major items that comes up from the cyber insurance carriers is the ability to embargo devices if something occurs. If you have a cyber attack and there are major outages through the network and things need to be reviewed for any breaches or data leaks or anything like that, a lot of the cyber insurance companies are actually asking for the equipment to be turned off and kept in the state that it was in. And with that, we wouldn't have any services for the town. So we were looking at having backups to that implemented in the cloud. So if we needed to, we could take our existing connection out to the cloud resources and bring up those services at any given time if we would have an incident here. So planning for that type of thing. So we could have a mitigation. One of the other items that we're looking at is to understand all of the dependencies that departments have in IT. That's part of our CIS controls that we're looking at. Be able to see how much data they have, what the risk of that data is to the to any kind of cyber attack, and then what protection policies we need to put in place for those types of things. We are looking to add an additional IT person for next year. That has been identified as a network security and server type administrator in the network, be able to handle a lot of these increased activities that we'd be doing monitoring for any kind of cyber events. Then the last thing that we're looking at is hardware replacement. We are currently on a 3-year cycle that we're trying to maintain for all of our MDTs in the police department and the fire department. Those are the laptops that are installed in the vehicles, both fire engines and fire trucks and ladders and police cars. All have these for communication with dispatch, be able to get their calls for service and be able to see where they're going, and any kind of GIS data they want to look at is all involved with those things. We currently have about 40 units that are going to be coming off of warranty. We'd like to keep those under warranty. What we're seeing right now is anywhere between about $500 and $1,000 for repair on these units for just about anything that goes wrong with them if they're out of warranty. We want to maintain those without buying a new one. So we'd like to get our infrastructure on that, and part of the ask that has increased the hardware line items is be able to maintain that and start that replacement cycle. So over the last 3 or 4 years, we have transitioned everybody away from Panasonic to GTAC laptops, and everybody's running the same units. We'd like to maintain that. And then something that's come around because of a incident this year, that's come around again in the budget, is to replace the phone system for the town. We had a event earlier in the year where our backup system failed, and that needed to be replaced. The cost of that took the identified funds for a new phone system for this year, and it needed to be addressed within our budget. So we pulled that aside, and what we're seeing right now is that we won't be able to replace that in the current year. I think that's all about at this point. If you have any questions.
Thanks for hanging on. I think I bring up the rear on this one. HR, the budget, there are some increases in some areas that we did not, other than personnel that you approved this morning. Thank you again. We've got some increases in contractual services, promotions, and consulting. When I go to the next slide, please. The consulting it's a $9,900 increase, bringing that line to $20,000. Our middle managers, though very good at their jobs, the technical portion of their jobs, they are the ones that I think we have invested the least amount of money from a leadership perspective. So I want to, along with the kind of homegrown training that we have in-house, I'd like to provide some additional leadership training. It could be anything from DISC or emotional intelligence coaching and development, that type of thing. From a promotion standpoint, I'd like to increase that. Sorry, I jumped the line here. $5,000. That's to do quarterly all staffs next year, perhaps some staff picnics, some funds to be able to bring us together more so than we have been. Contractual services looks like it's a scary number, 62,000. 45 of that is just moved money. The funds that pay the fees for our ADP, which is payroll, HRIS, record retention, our learning management system, all of that was coming from bank fees, and finance has asked that return to HR. So not new fees, just different place that they're paid out of. And then the compensation study is 37.5. It is, we did a compensation study 3 years ago, and it's important to maintain that information, make sure that if, just to understand where we are. This is not a commitment to make any kind of compensation changes next year, other than what's already been recommended. But again, just to understand where we are.
My contractual services shows it only going up $17,000. And general non-departmental bank fees are going from $25,000 to $40,000.
I think
These are the sheets I got Friday. Have they changed since then?
it has not changed since then. That is the information that I received, that it's,
It says 20,500 to 37,500 on one HR contractual services.
mine says 82.5.
On here, to see, maybe that changed it, gets pulled.
So then bank fees are going up 15 grand. But if these are being pulled from bank fees, I would think bank fees would be going way down. But just that, I mean, I don't need an answer right now, but just so you know what
Sure.
I'm seeing.
Next one. And this is staff in general, not necessarily HR department. And you've all seen a little bit of this information, but I wanted to give you some background on how it came to be. We have a peer wellness and support, peer wellness and engagement team committee. Basically, it is a representative or two from each department. We come together at the beginning of the year and start talking about what do we want to do to impact employees this year. We usually have, I don't know, 15 or 20 different ideas, and we thin that down to the top 5. And this is one of the top 5 that is budget dependent. We currently, as Tim mentioned earlier, we match 50 cents on the dollar up to 6% of the employee's salary. We would like to increase that to a net contribution of 5%. You can see the 2023 estimated expense and the 2024 estimated expense, taking into consideration a 7% increase in salaries. What we, it's an estimate. Obviously, those are dependent on employees' contributions and the choices they make. We've gone through and made some estimations on that based on today's activity and some assumptions. And we estimate that's between 236 and 253,000, depending on where we land with the compensation increase.
So explain that again, Joe, the 253, we're going from 236 to 253 with the match.
That's a 7% increase.
Okay, because when I added up all of the 401A match increase between current and proposed, it was a $469,000 increase.
I will check on that. That is
Like
not sure.
fire
that-
alone was $219,000. Now, they are also adding people, so that will add somewhat to that number. But it was 470 basically for an increase in the match to go, and it was 60 for the longevity, so it was 530. So
Okay,
you could
I'll check
certainly
in on
numbers
that.
are way different.
I think the part of it, at least the part of it is the increase in personnel. In the number. So,
Yeah, maybe for sure.
because what I got was, well, I did a look at the difference between a 4% increase and a 7% increase.
Well, and just to give you an example, let me get my numbers here right, so I don't want to be giving bad stuff, but police are adding 4 people, it's $110,000 addition.
I'll
That's not
verify
gonna
what
be
numbers
just-
came from where.
What's that?
I'll verify what numbers
Yeah,
came from where.
because it's proposed, their budget, 401A match retirement is 110,274 going to 226,65. that's 4 people, let's say, call it 10% increase in personnel. But
So the calculation for the 2024 budget is based on full utilization. From a budgetary standpoint, you don't want a budget that people won't take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Knowing that some people won't, and so that would be a budget windfall
Yes.
on there.
But I'm
So
assuming 2023's budget is the same way. It's not 2023 actuals. It's still 2023 budget. 2 numbers I use. And I'm not picking on police. It's just an easy one because they're not adding.
those would have been, yeah.
It was
So-
100% increase.
We did the calculation this year based on full utilization of the employee benefit.
Okay, so the
That's-
2023 calculation was not based on full utilization?
There's your difference.
Got it.
Those were based on numbers that were provided from HR.
So then what happens to those dollars that aren't fully utilized? And I would encourage every employee to fully utilize them, or they just swept back to the general fund at the end?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so it really is only then a $20,000 difference, but just be aware the budget increase is pretty substantial because they are of the calculation. Thanks.
Okay, town court, everything is pretty much stayed the same. We have a part-time court person that is through our office. That person now does court and public assistance. So their salary is going to be split between town court and public assistance. So in town court, you're not seeing much of a difference. But on the next slide, when you get to public assistance, we'll be adding a salary line in there. Everything else is remaining the same, but it's just the split of the salary. And the reason why there's a bit of a difference, you have your judge's salary and prosecutors in the court.
Is there a more efficient way to do that? Like public assistance, we're giving out 60 grand and it costs us 20 grand to give it out?
I would have to look into it. I know one of the things that we're wanting to do left in the budget is to get a software, which would help with that a lot as far as our reporting and tracking of public assistance. But there's a lot that goes into being a public assistance investigator because there's a ton of paperwork. You have to call landlords. You have to sometimes you have to call banks. You have there's just a lot of work in the process of pulling everything together to be able to make a decision on their behalf.
Is public assistance required? I mean, can you take this $80,000 in assistance and give it to an organization that's already kind of doing that and let them distribute it?
During the reorg, we absorbed those townships, and so we are the trustee.
Legally have to offer them. Got it. Okay.
Non-departmental. As Ryan was talking about earlier, this is where we're seeing a significant increase in the property casualty insurance. You're not seeing the entire increase right here because some of that has been also passed on to wastewater and golf course. The contractual services.
Hey, Cindy,
here- yes.
sorry, before we move on from that. Is there, given the dramatic increases happening because of incidents through this year, have we looked at some level of self-insurance and kind of having more of like in healthcare, for example, I have a high deductible health plan, right? Catastrophic, it's covered. If it's not, I just self-fund it. Have we looked at that for this kind of insurance to drop that rate?
No, we
That
have
might
not.
be something, because we're looking for savings, to sort of, self-insure the thing, unless there's some $3 million claim, and then we're covered. I don't want a huge liability, but it might be something to look at.
You can also,
Because you
I mean,
wouldn't get
there
stuck.
is a huge, I'm sure just like in health insurance, when you're self-insured, you have something like this, where you have catastrophic.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was thinking. Yeah, it's a huge number, we're covered, but if it's a $50,000 claim, we just write the check and might save money.
Just depends on how strong. the funds are.
Yes.
So the significant increase in the contractual services is the transportation plan study that Lance was talking about earlier. That's where this is being paid right here. I did increase bank fees a little bit. I know we pulled the ADP stuff out, but bank fees ended up being in the hole, and probably most of that was because we were carrying ADP as well, but I just want to make sure that we're not going to be in the hole next year with our bank fees.
Are bank fees related to like payroll stuff, not necessarily related to like
Well,
the
it's just-
savings account? things like
it's
that?
supposed to be just, like your account analysis charges or so forth, your bank fees, your merchant service fees,
Yeah, okay.
those types of things. But we were paying the ADP fee out of this as well this year.
That's what Joe was talking about.
Right.
moving that out. So even moving that out, you still think it needs to go up 15 grand?
Basically, it's just precautionary. We could leave it at 25 and see where we're at halfway through the year.
And are you fairly confident so on the revenue side, we're going from like 10 grand and interest to 1.5 million? Fairly confident in that as well?
Yes, it increased significantly.
Do the balances we're carrying help us waive any bank fees? Seems
Not
shaky,
with,
so,
not with the type of accounts that we're.
Most of the money is today in Trust Indiana. Have you transferred? Okay. So yes, you could potentially, if you kept the money at the bank, you could do that.
Got it.
But it'd still be a net, it'd be a wash.
I'm actually moving all employee bonds into this. It's kind of got a little confusing when each department kind of just have a little bit here and there. It's just a lot easier just to pay for the employee bonds in one spot.
Chamber and Z-Works, looks like they're just moving to promotions then. Perhaps Chamber and Z-Works are moving to promote and having their own line item, 282. Is that right?
I think they do have their own line item.
Yeah, they do have their own.
Okay, because they're budgeted at 0 in this sheet.
Yeah.
I just
I
want to
think
make,
we were just waiting to hear what needed to be put in there.
okay.
Yeah.
So is, getting back to my, so you're waiting to hear by just shifting the promotions and they'll shift down that increase in promotions isn't related to something else. It's the 120 grand that is the total of those two, and the promotions went up 120 grand. So I'm assuming that's the offset, or is there something?
Well,
else?
200, it was at 250.
It was at 230 and now it's 350.
Yes, that would be the difference.
That's the difference.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is the difference.
So, just to clear, so technically, there is no increase in promotions.
Those two, Z-Works and Chamber do have their own lines.
I guess I can cover this. We didn't have any increases in salary, FICA, workman's comp, any of that stuff. Reduced the legal fees for the amount that we originally brought Heather and Barnes and Thornburg in for ordinance rewrites that we did this year. Shifted that down to contractual services for a couple of reasons. One, I know there are some projects, there are some things that other councils have, we just haven't really been able to dial in on, so I just kind of want to put some cash there for that. Also, state legislature did pass a ruling allowing the town council, reorganized town councils to enter into contract with legal fees so that's certainly something that we want to be able to have access to in the event that we need to do that. And then we could have potentially 7 new counselors, so there's additional training available that I felt was important to have with the budget, so.
So I'll just state that I had Joe send me the document that she sent out a couple of years ago comparing our town council salaries to those of other neighborhoods, 13 other municipalities. And, you know, as was noted back then 2 years ago, when the administration proposed increasing our stipend, we decided in the middle of COVID that was not the appropriate thing to do and backed off that. As 4 of us are rotating off council, I think that Zionsville being the lowest of 14 different municipalities, and in some cases by a lot, I'm going to repose a difference in that budget. I know we're looking at cutting back on a lot of things, but as we did last year in bringing our employee salaries up to more of the median, I think that's probably appropriate, and to also then to peg this to some other salary so that we don't have to revisit every 4, 8, 12, 20 years to peg it as a percentage of, say, the mayor's salary. Just throwing that out there.
That's it.
Talk about it now?
Yeah.
Tim, can you, ask Joe and she's for you. So there's a proposal for a 7% pay increase, which, you know, I understand and support it once we get through this budget. Can you give us a sense of, for every percent increase proposed, what that budget impact is? So if 7% is
About $160,000.
And last year was, you know, supposed to be an anomaly where we increased 7%. Plus, it ended up being about 10% overall for everybody.
Correct.
What's our rationale for another 7%? Anybody?
I will volunteer. Last year, the 7% got us where we should have been. It had, it really didn't address inflation that we've experienced this year. If you take employee salaries, their buying power, they're still in the hole. And do I expect to do this every year? No, but the last 18 months have been unprecedented inflation, and that's the reason.
I understand. Yeah, I understand the rationale. I don't think you see 7% increases as the norm across the country. Like that's not what.
Most of our neighbors from municipalities, from what I have seen, are doing between 5 and 6%. They're going in with 5 or 6%. I would add that they were also not doing large percentages last year to bring their staff up to where they needed to be. Because they were, to finish that thought, because they were already where they needed to be.
And I know I say this every year, but we really ought to be on a performance-based increase, not a flat increase across the board.
We don't have merit increases, and these are all cost of living increases, therefore it's across the board. We have made progress in that. I feel really good about where we are from a performance standpoint with our employees. We've gone from a system where employees felt was unfair to and administered unfairly, not necessarily that the performance on paper was not fair, to a year of nothing to a year of all supervisors being encouraged to have at least monthly one-on-ones with their staff, to now we have required quarterly conversations that are documented and uploaded in ADP. And the first one of those is fourth quarter this year. So we're making progress in what seems to be a reasonable system for a town. It is, you know, I come from your background and it's super easy to do a very objective metric-based performance evaluation. That is not the case here in municipal services. It's very difficult. And so I think this is a much better way to administer, to gauge performance and keep a better handle on areas for improvement, areas that needs to be addressed, and successes that we have through the year.
Back to your original question, Brian. Yes, last year, you had the cost of living increase of 7.8%. The cost, not all employees participated or realized it, but the cost of the longevity pay was about 2.5%. So the total cost of increases was over 10% last year. This year, what is in the budget is a 7% increase. The cost of longevity is about 2.2% as well. And then there's the other 2% on the 401A. So from that, you know, that total cost then would be.
So what's like the most efficient way to move forward? I mean, Jason, don't leave. You got 2 seconds. I know you gotta go. I know, but what's the most efficient way to move forward? Because, you know, the mayor has presented us, I think what we've asked for, as I appreciate, which is sort of the budget of everything the department heads want, right? And I think this council generally has created kind of a balanced budget, especially on a go forward basis. I don't know that it's the most efficient time for me to say, you know, I don't want a transportation plan. I'm not saying I'm just making it up. And, you know, for Alice to say he doesn't want X, Y, and Z, is there an easy way to sort of submit? Do we go back to the departments and say, trim it up a little bit? Like, how do you two feel the best way to move this forward is versus us sitting here for the next 6 hours debating 50 grand here, 100 grand here? Do we have a plan for that? It's sort of a new way we're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, it would be good to get, you know, council input on, you know, where we want to see things trimmed down a little bit. I would certainly like to engage this administration, the new administration, to understand all priorities across the board. You know, I think there are some questions that, you know, should start looking through line by line, getting every single detail. Certainly it's good to get, you know, this information here, but I think I heard a couple of times when people had questions, department heads would reference the Excel spreadsheet or reference the spreadsheet that we don't have. So, I mean, maybe there's not a desire to share that. I don't know, but that would certainly be helpful so we can go and see even those items as well. I think that.
Is there a spreadsheet?
I haven't
We're not
seen
sharing?
I mean, somebody had asked something to send you before, and she might have to create a
All
sheet.
that out, yeah.
So-
Everything's out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that understanding, this council has worked hard to pass operational balanced budgets in the past. I think there's some questions that Councilor Choice had about, you know, why certain items are listed in different areas. Should they be listed as capital expenses or should they be listed in the actual operating balances? I mean, I think understanding those types of questions from us, the administration, the department.
Yeah, there's capital and then there's capital. And it's all about the way the budget process works in the state. So it's not what you think of, what you and I might think of as a capital kind of investment. It's the state still categorizes a lot of things as a capital, on the capital realm.
That's the problem we ran into last year. When I realized that the state statutes determine how we can and cannot classify things
So we have to do the exercise of going, this is a one-time process, it's not a one-time process. And then trying to figure out what a balanced budget looks like for that standpoint. We can't just shift things around all at once.
AIM has some really terrific municipal finance classes and seminars. So anybody who's interested in, understanding the difference between that, because a banker can get real frustrated with municipal finance. They're really good programs. It's not easy stuff.
I think from a department head standpoint, if you think about things like a 7% increase in salaries, if that's something that we all feel is the right thing, there's going to be more cuts for the other things you guys want to do, right? Contractual services, equipment, whatever that may be. I just want to sort of let that be known that to me it is very important that we are passing a budget that is sustainable. We may have high cash balances, and that's okay to do those one-time things that some of you propose. But, a 7% increase, and I'm not just picking on that, it's just a big number, right? That's $1.12 million increase, plus all the additional labor we've been getting. If we do that, that is something we're going to get every year and passing increases on top of that. So if that is a priority, that's okay. But know that I'm going to want to make sure if we're prioritizing that, I'm going to deprioritize a lot more. I don't necessarily want to go to Jared and say, you need to cut this specific thing, or chief thing, or you need to cut this specific thing, but there's going to have to be some cuts coming just to be pragmatic about it. We could pass this budget with cash on hand, but in 2 years, we got a problem.
Well, and I think the best thing to do would be the department heads figure out what they can do without. What they, separate the need from the want, and make those proposals about, okay, here's what we'd like to cut out, because if it's left up to us, we could cut something that's vitally important to you. I'd like your recommendation about, we all know that we have to cut some things. You recommend, hey, here's where we would like to see the cuts come from. And personally, I think, an easy start would be taking the 7% across the board increase in salaries and making it more reasonable for 4%. And that's an easy cut.
It is an easy cut. It actually doesn't net us a whole lot, though. It is. And to Josh's point, we can, even on the capital side, say we figure out how to classify all this. The fund balance, we're spending that down way faster than, to get it to a normal 15 to 20%, but at some point we'll reach that 15 to 20% and have to really create a balanced funding. Fund those fund balances and take it out at that point.
I think it's important to make sure we understand what's a net new piece of capital equipment and what's a replacement. Because if it's a net new fire truck, for example, then that means humans, these firefighters need to staff that. There is on recurring costs that come with some capital expenditures. So being real clear, I think for department heads to really make sure that the council understands what capital expense also has a recurring investment from the community. I think so.
Cindy, we haven't looked at putting together, I know that the fire chief has a capital replacement fund that we fund every year. And so when he wants a fire truck, it's $2 million. We've been funding for that. So it's not a big a deal. Have we looked at the other departments doing that? Lance with all the street trucks that he has, or the parks department, or at least cars. Has that ever come up in conversation?
It's kind of what we use the CCD fund for.
Okay.
Yeah. And last few years, we started using it more for, the capital items like the police car purchase and so forth. So that's kind of what that's been utilized for.
I think based on statute, you don't have any other CUME funds that you could adopt. It'd be great. But so just to give an overview, total cost of longevity, 401A, and salary is about 1.7 million. total cost of new employees and the corresponding equipment that goes with those new employees is about 3.8 million.
And that's ongoing too, right? They
Correct.
both are, but that's 5.5 million of ongoing costs.
And, you know, it was mentioned earlier, I forget who, but there's a cost of a little over $600,000 in firefighters that were added this year that were paid majority through the SAFER grant that will come on in 2025.
I guess one thing I'd like to hear the other councilors talk about this property tax levy appeal. Is that an interest to pursue that? I'm interested in it from a, just given the shortfalls we see. Is there anyone opposed to that? Is there thinking through the budgeting? Joe, are you fine with that?
Is there a cost associated with pursuing it? Is there a cost?
There's not much cost. Is it?
No, I mean, you know, we'd have some costs associated with, you know, putting together the documentation, but
But we're not talking
Beyond
about
that, no.
$150,000 and then $880,000.
A lot of the requests for net new were public safety, for police, 15 fire. You've got to justify, you can't just say you want it. So that may be part of the justifications, but you've got cuts to put back in. It's that public safety piece that's important to administration and for council. I didn't hear any opposition, so I would say go forward with that. We could use that.
we'll add it into the revenue side.
Say you want to make a note that that doesn't mean you're going to get it.
No, I understand.
Right,
No, I
you
understand
wanna have
that.
some- Maybe, I don't know, departments want to identify certain line items. Hey, if we don't get this 880 grand extra. Maybe these are where we would.
Because they may come back and tell you to cut your budget.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so that I'm not misunderstanding, when you get that extra revenue, that's then baked into future.
Yes,
Yes, so that's a permanent increase.
yes.
If they give you the full amount. Deals
If-
you have to
right.
kind of-
Whatever they give you
Is
becomes a
baked in.
part of your base.
So we may not want to put it into the revenue side as we budget, or is that?
You would have to.
You would have to, but the kind of understanding you might not get much of it or any of it. But if you do get it, then that's the 880,000 further that the next council can work with the 2025 budget.
Can you tie?
And that also would not preclude future councils if they qualified.
Yeah.
For the 2% excess
It keeps going.
to also do that.
Do you put the specific costs in the justification? In other words, if we don't get it, let's say we say it's all fire, it's a justification, 6 more firefighters. If we don't get it, I wouldn't want to go back to parks and say they got to cut their budget $86,000. Is there, can you kind of correlate that so we know that we're adding it based on the best chance to justify getting it? Does that make sense? Yeah.
More than likely not till December. 1782 notices go out. They may give it prior to that certain time.
I haven't read this thing. Reason, kind of push this process.
And if you don't get it, you do have a chance to adjust. So like, let's pass a budget that's got 1.5 million between the two different levy increases, and they only give you the amount that's for the transition, it's 750. Limited ability to adjust.
Yeah.
I would just say maybe do that, like, have it, you know, have a time, so that way. That's around the budgets, yeah.
So is the next step in the presentation of the revised budget in a council meeting? Is that, as I looked at that calendar?
So proposal is for the budget to be presented on the 5th.
Is there
So
enough?
if you're making a request of department heads, we are going to need that back by the end of this week. At the latest, to get that.
The posting deadline would be then the following Monday, 10. It's such a tight turnaround.
The deadline for the, would be the 8th of September, right? I think, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was talking about posting deadline for the council, which would require it go to Amy Lacy by 4 o'clock the following Monday, because we're trying to make sure people have time to look at it in advance, and that's a requirement for everybody.
And not ideally, I don't speak for President Plum, but we can always have a special meeting if necessary, right? So I know this has been a lot of work for all the department heads. We had, if you needed a little more time, I guess my other question for all of you is, do you have enough feedback from us? You kind of got to go scrum it out in the room, but do you have kind of a general sense of what this council's looking for? Some of the yeses, so.
I'd appreciate some specific feedback. If there's anything in a budget that you want to make sure is continued. I've listened to a lot of people when it comes to pathway projects or, things of that nature. So, if you want to make sure something stays in there, let us know. The rest of it, sure, we can start lopping off equipment type things. But I don't know how much, latitude in the distribution of the property tax there is as far as a proration across all the funds, because you start to get into, well, you can look at DPW has so much to cut in motor vehicle highway. You can also put more money in motor vehicle highway too. So I think we'd appreciate the specific feedback on anything you want to keep in, but there's going to have to be some difficult decisions. If we're going to really trim, depending on how much we want to get, maybe guidance from the council on get closer, is closer halfway there, is closer balance. What's our target, I guess?
So, and I'm only gonna give you my feedback representing everyone else. I think two things. One is, to me, a better understanding of what is one-time must-haves, but are, even if they aren't capitalized from a state standpoint, can be considered one-time, and what are the budget, what are the fund balance implications of that, and really heavily justifying any hiring. I would rather take care of the people we have than hire a bunch of new people. So I think I'll be critical of any hiring company. I'm not saying you can't do any hiring, right? Again, this is just my perspective. I think there's a lot of valid justification for it. Just those are the pieces of anything that's in there we're gonna incur year over year over year. That's something to just, that's something just to keep note of. I trust you all that the things you're prioritizing, the things we most need, or than me telling you what we need. But that's kind of my agenda.
All right.
Thank you.